So this is Wylie Mei's birth story, and this is her. And it's taken me a while to do this, and I lost half of the birth footage that I was very thoughtful about collecting. So without even seeing the content that I have left over, I'm gonna do this. Because of this, it's probably going to be the easiest vlog I've ever created. I only have half the amount of footage. What do you think, Wylie? To edit. But look, like, I'm not a doula. I'm not a midwife. I've attended 2 births. They've been mine. And I'm not here to teach you, exactly how to give birth. I'm here to, like, remind you that you're the type of woman who could free birth. You can do it, and you were meant to. So let's get started. Wylie. Oh, mommy's pony got you. Are you excited? Oh, mommy's pony got you again. Ah, okay, wonderful. All right, so this was the second birth that we've done together here, and this was really different than the first one in a lot of ways. It was 30 hours and Reiner was 46, but this was definitely a more challenging labor than I think the last one was. So when did it all start? All right, labor diaries. It is 9:49 a.m. on the 2nd of December. Great day. I am finishing up a writing deadline for my book. My book is literally coming out like today, and I'm just finishing up some last minute things. What do we have going on here? The last few days have been pretty just heavy. I'm like, oh, I think this baby's coming any minute. And then a lot of leaky vag last night, a lot of leaky vag this morning. And that's usually a sign to me that things are starting to move. So I'm not in labor yet. I've had contractions for the last couple of weeks, but I'm not in labor, but it's definitely things are progressing and moving along. So back to this writing deadline. And I really, so many people say that the second labor is so much faster. This pregnancy, I didn't do any research. I was just like, whatever, I know the drill. And here's the drill. You start having contractions, things happen, like the mucus plug comes out, water breaks, sometimes it doesn't break, but none of these things there's no crystal ball. You can't measure your cervix, you can't do stuff and find out how long it's gonna be until the baby comes. There's literally nothing you can do to find out how long it's gonna be until the baby comes. You can go from not dilated at all to totally dilated in an hour. Your mucus plug could fall out all day long, like it happened with me. Contractions being spaced together or far apart, none of these things will tell you when the baby's gonna come. The only way you know that the baby's gonna come is when you basically can't do anything but navigate contractions. The space between them is gonna be so short that you basically had just enough time to turn around and recalibrate, and then another contraction is on the way. And that's the sign. For me, some symptoms of that is I start to get really hot and then really cold. I get temperature fussy, puked both times, and feel like I have to shit both times. So it took 28 hours to get to that point with this labor.
You just want
All right, 6:07 p.m., December 2nd. All kinds of fluid coming out. A little bit of what looks like show, little mucus plug. And yeah, I should say that the last 3 days I've been having contractions, but nothing major. Yeah. So I didn't do any research this time because I was like, look, when I get to that point, I'll deal with it. And it doesn't matter what position the baby is in, doesn't matter when the baby is coming, until that point, there's nothing anyone can do about it. And the best thing I can do is just stay busy. All right, it's 12:26. I was having contractions before bed. Can't really sleep lying down anymore, so gonna get in the hot tub and keep things warm down here and hang out by myself and see what happens. But I was kind of hoping that it would be, you know, less than 12 hours or not more than 12 hours. But something that was really different about this with Reiner, it was 46 hours, but from the first contraction to the last, contractions were every 4 minutes and lasted for 1 minute. Starting with Wylie, starting at about like midnight, which was when I woke up and was like, I think I need to, you know, get up and move around a little bit. I was having contractions every 4 minutes all of that first night. So I was like, oh, cool, you know, moving right along. But then the next day, as you guys will see in the footage, my labor completely slowed down. I think I went a couple hours without a contraction. We made cookies, we did all of this stuff. And I was still having contractions here and there, but I was pretty annoyed because I had already lost a night of sleep to a lot of contractions. Reiner woke up, and so here's...
So his sleep was all jumbled too.
So the main reason why this birth was so much more challenging than Reiner's was because Reiner. This is Reiner, and Reiner is my birthing doula. Reiner, you gonna help mommy have baby in the belly?
I'm doing it.
You are doing it.
I'm putting glue on baby in the belly.
And, you know, there was like the dreams I had of having my 2-year-old around for the birth. And it actually did all, you know, time out divinely. But it's very, Reiner doesn't sleep if I'm not there in the bed sleeping with him. And thank God he's weaned. Otherwise, we would have really been in a predicament. But because I needed Reiner to sleep so that he wouldn't be a fucking unreasonable cunt for the next day, I had to stay in bed and have contractions laying down, which is like the worst, you know, it's basically like at hospital, having contractions laying down. Like if I can move into contractions, if I can dance into contractions, squat into contractions or whatever, they're all more tolerable. But lying down, contractions just happen to you. And I also couldn't make a sound. So turn the camera so they can see that a lot of people always comment about the whip that we have in the background on the wall if Patrick's filming skills. If not, we'll just add a picture.
That's beautiful.
Yeah. A lot of people comment about the bullwhip that we have in our house, and I was, towards the end of labor, I was definitely biting down on that thing. I started to get, it was very hard, it was hard to navigate the Reiner, the contractions. I think that that's really what kind of set it over the edge for me. And I had been...
Yeah, he didn't know how to handle you and that, seeing you like that.
Well, no,
he was doing a good job.
He was doing a really good job,
but then he really wanted to control the situation. So he's
and
making us go all over the place.
And no kid is going to be like, you'll have a kid that's a great helper for like an hour, but for 30 hours of like, let's make it about mommy. Like, I don't think any kid is going to do that.
Being led all over the house.
Yeah. And but he was really passionate about birth. And something that's funny about him is, I don't know if you've noticed all of the things he's calling placentas, but Reiner is very, you know, very interested in everything about birth and cords, and Reiner calls everything that's attached to a cord a placenta. So the charger for the phone, the cord is the, you know, the cord, but the brick of it is the placenta, what plugs into the wall, and the same with the computer charger and everything else. And it's changed because he used to say placenta's a really nice lady, but now placenta is whatever's attached to a cord. So if you come to our house and Reiner's asking you for a placenta, just give him a charger brick. Okay, call it a day. But something that had been a real theme for me in this pregnancy, like when I was, a big difference between Reiner's birth and this baby's birth is with Reiner's birth, I really felt like I could do it. Like I was like, yeah, 100%, I got this, no problem. And it wasn't about the birth. It was about being able to have another kid and raise a kid. And I felt very equipped and able to do that. This entire pregnancy, my brain has been like crunch around the idea of having another kid, even though I really, really wanted another baby. I just couldn't imagine how I was possibly going to handle it. And so even though when it came to the concept, I was like, yeah, I know that my body can birth. I know that I can do this. You know, I was very confident about birthing. I was really not confident about how I would be able to handle 2 kids and everything that I wanted to do, and love and attention and all of that. And Reiner is he likes a lot of attention. He wanted a lot of attention from me all throughout the pregnancy, and it was really hard for me to physically do some of these things while being so pregnant. And so in a lot of ways, I was looking forward to the birth, because I was like, well, at least everyone will fuck off and leave me alone while I'm having a baby, right? And when
we tried.
Of course you try. Yeah, I mean, it was just my mind, you know. I'd like saying I want this thing, knowing it's, you know, definitely not going to be that way. If I wanted to go birth alone, I should go do it at a hospital. But
you wouldn't have been alone there.
Yeah, that's true. But if I wanted my family not there, like, I want my family there. I want my family there. Maybe not Reiner the whole time.
Oh, that's how it worked out.
But I started to get I really believe that that emotions have a huge impact on birth and the ease of birth. And after reading Spiritual Midwifery when we were pregnant with Reiner, just seeing how much like a woman's bad attitude, and also in homeopathy, they talk a lot about it. If you have a bad attitude, if you've got anger, you got resentment, like this movie style birth of like, fuck you, you did this to me, wow, it hurts. Like, these are your emotions, ladies. These are your emotions. And having that type of attitude means that you are resisting contractions. And as long as you're resisting contractions, birth is going to take a lot longer. Probably around 4 p.m. contractions have slowed down, just about 1 every 7 minutes. Motherfuckers though, you know, like, these are big contractions, big short contractions. I definitely didn't feel entitled or even like expecting a short birth, but like, I just feel like there's gonna be another multi-day fucking party. And you forget all about the second that baby is born, but my kid has been needing mom basically all day, having a baby while having another kid running around is very annoying. There's a lot of sweet moments, don't get me wrong, but like, it is very annoying. So, takes as long as it takes. It just takes as long as it takes is what's going on here. Whew. So, you know, we watched this vlog recently, a pretty just standard hospital birth in COVID times, and seeing how that kind of more Western birthing philosophy is all rooted in control. You know, you start with 15 years of taking a pill every day called birth control, and then freaking out when you can't get pregnant the moment you stop taking your birth control. And then all of the, you know, IVF and no God timing, no anything like that, all of these things to control. And then, you know, oh, the baby's not coming on the right date, so we're going to induce it to control. And I'm not enjoying the contraction, so I'm going to get an epidural to control. Like, birth is all about surrender. And in surrender, your emotions and your attitude make a really big difference. I'm honestly pretty annoyed because I just don't feel like having a baby right now. You know, like, the contractions are very annoying, and I'm just like not in the mood to see another fucking head come out of my vagina. And like, I'm a little annoyed. And so I went and I had noticed that I was feeling, when I would get a contraction, you know, every 30 minutes, I noticed that like the things I wanted to say would be like, bitch, fucker, asshole, you know, and I'm like, wow, like a lot of anger coming out. And I don't just think stuff like that is cute, you know, like when I'm talking, when I'm using that type of language, when I'm in that type of attitude, like I'm clearly being possessed by an angry personality. I'm being possessed by the feeling of anger, and you know, it's totally fine to feel anger, but I do want to know where it's coming from. So I went out to the sauna and you know, just took a little break by myself, as you guys see in this video, and I realized that what I was so angry about is I just never feel like I get a fucking break. And I'm cranky because I was up all night with really close together contractions, and now like every 7 minutes, and I just feel like I'm getting further away from my goal of never being pregnant again. And it hasn't been like, I'm just cranky. Like, when am I going to get a break? And with kids, you're never going to get a break. You're never going to get a break. It's not going to, you got to stop looking for that. You got to like commit to that. And it'll happen. But I was already feeling very overwhelmed, and I hadn't had my big birth realization yet. And so I just felt like I was already spread super thin. Just didn't have it, you know, there's so much that I wanted to do. I didn't think that I would be able to handle another kid. And because I didn't think that I could handle another kid, my body was holding on to birth. My body was holding on to labor. My body was holding on to the baby because there was something inside of me saying, I'm not ready to have this kid. I'm not ready to have this kid. And so once I went to the sauna and I realized that, I was like, I need to change my attitude. No fucking action all day, but just enough action to make it not like a regular day. I'm pissed. I don't feel like being in labor right now. And maybe that's why I'm not in labor. Maybe I need to change my attitude. Maybe I need to change my attitude. But I had come up here, I had taken a shower, let my hair, I was like, I gotta change the energy, change my clothes, and started a fire, put some music on, smoked some weed. Was like, I'm determined to change my attitude. And all right, so 6:30 p.m. and I just had my big emotional meltdown. And I really do believe that emotional stuff kind of holds up the birth too. So I'm very angry, and then I finally burst into tears because I'm very mad that this is not an easier birth than the last one. And I already feel like things are so hard. So I've just been crying and praying a lot, and I've made the commitment I am not going to stop moving until this baby is born. So contractions are starting to come a little bit closer together, and it feels good to bear down on them, and I don't give a shit. God's got to help me with all of this. So I'm definitely surprised at what an you know, I was like, oh yeah, I've been here before, fucking no problem, baby number 2. And it's a totally, you like can't fuck around with birth. Like you got to be totally in the zone with it. It's always going to be challenging. So last birth, this is super different than being mad about contractions happening, super different than waiting in bed, waiting for contractions to happen to you, sitting in a hospital, waiting for contractions to happen to you. Like, they have power over you when you do that. They hurt a lot more when you do that. If you're seeking something out, it doesn't have power over you. If you're seeking something out, you're not afraid of it. So I was like, I'm going looking for contractions, and I'm going to start trying to invite, because that was really the turning point with Reiner, was when I started looking for contractions as opposed to being like, oh God, here comes another one. And so while I was in front of the fire, bouncing around, I just poured out my heart to Divine Feminine. And everyone that's on Bruja Report knows that this is really my biggest practice is not lying to God, not saying, God, yeah, I'm so grateful for everything and thanks for this. Can you just help me do this one thing? Like, I really believe that you have to be honest with God and just tell her what's on your heart. Pray, like, don't tell her what to do. Just tell her your problems and let her sort it out. And I'm there in front of the fire, and I'm just listening to Reiner freak out upstairs and thinking about how much I'm not looking forward to a head coming out of my vagina. And I just started praying like really hard. And some of the things I was praying, I was like, God, I don't know how I'm going to do this. I don't know how I'm going to do this. Like, once this baby arrives, I don't know what the fuck I'm already underslept. I already feel like I could use more me times. I already feel like my projects are never going to get done. I already feel like I can't handle my kid. I already and when you pray in this way of just saying your problems, you realize the belief you have that's been holding you back. And the belief that I had was that Patrick and I are responsible for our childcare. And if it wasn't going to be us, and if we weren't okay with that, then we shouldn't have had fucking kids. I didn't believe that God helps with childcare. I thought that for some reason that even though God is everywhere, sees everything, can do anything, is in all things, I just thought that when it came to parenting, like we were on our own. And I don't know where I got that belief, but I've definitely had it for as long as I've been a parent, because I've never prayed for God to help me with my kids. Maybe like 2 or 3 times, and when I did, something amazing always would happen. Totally, either I would have an attitude shift, either my kid would drop down for like a spontaneous nap, but every time I pray, God always helps me with my kids. I just thought that there was that God didn't go there. And I realized while I was praying that God does childcare. So I started praying, help me, please. I need you to help me with my kids. I need you to help me with this birth. I need you to help me with this baby when she arrives or he arrives. I need you to help me with Reiner. I need you to help me. And I will pray. I remembered a verse from the Bible. It said, pray without ceasing. And Patrick has pray tattooed on his face, but there's to say pray without ceasing is one thing. To believe pray without ceasing is one thing, but to understand pray without ceasing and to live by that is totally different. And it's a prayer that's less, that goes like, help me, thank you, help me. Help me, thank you, help me. Help me, thank you, help me. Like always, always, always asking for that help. So, and tears rolling down my face, just pouring my heart out, crying my eyes out, because I realized, and this was the emotional block that was holding up the labor. I wasn't ready to have a kid because I didn't feel like I could handle it. And as a result, my labor wasn't moving whatsoever. When I poured my heart out to God, acknowledged that I didn't feel ready to have this baby, acknowledged all of the resentment and the frustration that I was feeling, instead of just letting myself say, fuck, bitch, every time I have a contraction, like it's cute, that really helped things move along. And right after that, Reiner and Daddy came down, we ate some spaghetti, and Reiner fell asleep. And that's when the labor started to progress. Reiner fell asleep at 6, and Wylie was born at 6:30 in the morning.
Yeah, I like that.
So, but a lot happened in between that.
Yeah.
So, we were able to Patrick and I got to sit and have like a nice visit together, smoked some weed, talked about things that we wanted to do, sat by the fire. And when I had big contractions, you know, like I could, if I was sitting up, I could move around with them pretty easily. We were able to put Reiner to bed around 8, and from 8 till, I don't know, probably 2 or 3 in the morning, you guys slept together.
Yeah, it was till about 3.
Yeah,
about 3.
about 3. So that was really like a miracle for me, that Reiner was sleeping with his dad, and that I didn't have to, you know, that I didn't have to go be lying down in the bed having quiet contractions. And so during that time, I think I took a little, I definitely didn't sleep. I don't even remember what I was doing.
I don't know. You might have came back in the bed a couple times.
Yeah, it was like second
Hot
night
tub.
of no sleep.
You're
Yeah,
right. I was listening. I wasn't really, I might have dozed off a couple times.
2:48, mid contraction, and about 2 minutes in between contractions. I've been in the jacuzzi for a little bit, and just ready. Definitely just feeling ready. Again, contractions were really, really sporadic, you know. Sometimes it'd be like, cool. So I'm trying to measure contractions, and it's going like contraction and 4-minute break, contraction 10-minute break, contraction 2-minute break. And I was just like, God, it could be days of this. And it's really important to not to push when your body feels like pushing, and not because you think it'll make things go faster. Because if you're pushing when you're not dilated, you're
pushing against the wall.
You're pushing against a wall. It's not going to do anything. But how you know when it is time to start pushing is when the contractions have become more intense, when you're really like sensitive to temperature, when you cannot do anything but navigate contractions. Push and see how it feels. And if it feels like it doesn't alleviate it or help you out or anything, then hold back, because you'll lose a lot of power by pushing. And the pushing doesn't need to go on and on and on. And your body will tell you when it's time to push. But basically the baby's descent, you push once the baby's in the birth canal to get the baby out of the vagina, you know, but the rest is just the baby descending and things opening up. So pushing is not really going to help with that at all. But around 3, Reiner woke up. We did some hot tub time together. He made me a whole beautiful thing by the fire, but he really wasn't, after an hour, he really wasn't in the mood to hear me labor.
He was getting pretty pissed at me for anything.
And he started to become demanding and like wanting stuff. And I was transitioning into deeper and deeper labor at that point. And we were like, oh my God, we got to do something, you know, because he was starting to turn up and become unreasonable. And he's a 2.5-year-old Taurus who can be so unreasonable.
And also was up at 4 in the morning.
Up at 4 in the morning, and it's not
hours.
About him. It's a second night with no sleep, and he, you know, there's like a lot going on. And the first time, you know, when we had Reiner, I appeared on a podcast called the Freebirth Society right afterwards, and they don't talk a lot on that particular podcast about the role that men play in it. And there's kind of a theme throughout the podcast of like these husbands kind of being these like idiot jerks that are just in the way of the birthing process. And that's definitely, that's not the truth of how birth goes. That's like a theme with that particular podcast. Most amazing educational resource. But I had asked them to please take my podcast episode down because I didn't want to, our story through that lens made Patrick sound like a fucking idiot asshole that was in the way. I
was just scared, nervous, first time, didn't know what was going on.
But I had, so after having that podcast episode pulled down, which was, it was a piece of press that I really wanted, and it was a community that I really wanted to be a part of, but I didn't want to contribute to that story of men being in the way, because Patrick really helped me with Reiner. But there was a big part of me that wanted to, with this next baby, birth alone to just see if I could do it. And something that I was really surprised at from that first time that I went down to labor in the jacuzzi was that I really missed Patrick. And I was like, fuck, I need him. Like, I need Patrick, and I know that Patrick needs to watch Reiner, but like, I need him. And the deeper I got into labor, like I needed to hold his hand. I needed to hold his hand through every single quiet contraction in the bed, fucking squeezing his hand like this because I can't scream. I needed his presence. I needed him to tell me I was doing good. Like, from a biological standpoint, yeah, he couldn't do anything, but being emotionally present for me, like I needed that. Not I wanted that. I fucking needed that. I could not have done it without him. So as we started to go deeper into labor, oh shit, I was like, Reiner is not letting Patrick go. I need help getting up. I need help through every single contraction. And I know that I need Patrick there when the baby starts coming out. So it was, hey Reiner, come on up. We're telling the story about you. Daddy and I are telling the story of Wylie's birth. All right. My teeth aren't brushed. My hair's not brushed. The phone's upside down. My makeup's not done. My shirt's not on. And it's time to shoot the other half of this video. Will you hold this camera?
I got it.
Okay, wonderful. All right, so the story that we left off at so far has, and show little Wylie. Show little Wylie, little baby. Hello. Hello. We are, how old is she today? 11 days old?
Not quite.
No, oh wait, no, it's December 11th.
She's a week and a day.
How is that a week and a day? She was born on the 4th.
She was born on Thursday, right? Today's Friday.
What? No.
What
She
day
was
she
born
born?
on the 4th of December and today's the 11th.
Okay, so a week. 4 plus 7 is 11.
So it's a week.
Is it a week today?
Oh my
I
God.
guess. I thought she was
She's-
born on Thursday.
Okay. She's 11 days old. I wait. It doesn't matter. With our first baby, it was like
She's about
4.5
week old.
days old, 4.5 days old. Like,
Could have sworn she was born on Thursday.
yeah, she probably
Oh.
would. She probably was.
She's about a week old. She's a week old.
Okay, cool. Now that we've established nothing, let's tell the rest of this story. So we're leaving off at, can you please like help me out with my looks like this? Like hold it like this. Hold it looking down on us. I don't want to
Look at
look,
my
I don't want to
hands.
look fine. I want to look good. Okay, it's better. All right, you tell the story.
I have to do it this way.
That's upside down.
Well, my hands. Does it matter?
Well, kind of.
They don't look upside down.
All right, well, I'll just flip it over. All right. Wylie, why don't you tell us? Okay, so the story that we left off at was we had called Melissa and okay, so Reiner needed to go to sleep.
We needed space.
We needed space. And luckily we had been doing some like experimenting with sleep training. We have melatonin gummies here, which have been real, and I've shared a lot about this on the Bruja Report. It's been helpful. But we were like, all right, Reiner, sorry, dude, you gotta go. So it was like melatonin gummy, Ponyo. 15 minutes later, he's out. We call Melissa. And I was like, Dad, like, you got to move. Like, basically, I was at a stage where I'm like, I can't get through these contractions without someone here. Like, and not quietly either. We had this whip that's up on the wall. Oh my God, I was biting down on that thing because it was really, I couldn't wake Reiner up. And God bless you, Katie Holmes out there. Scientology, silent birth, that shit is no joke. I did it probably 40% of the time with Wylie. That shit is no joke. I'm a screamer. I'm definitely a screamer at the end, but I make a lot of big noises during contractions, and I find that that helps me.
Mm-hmm.
But it felt to me like I only had like maybe 3 or 4 contractions before it was time to go to the bathroom. And I was like, I'm gonna, the way that I was pushing was changing. So basically, like, I'll do some test pushes to see if it's push time or not. But there's the difference between like bearing down, and you might only understand this if you're actually in labor, but there's bearing down, which is kind of like sturdying your inner body to meet the contraction. And it kind of helps alleviate the pain a little bit. But then the real actual push contractions literally feel like pushing with every fiber of your being, like your whole body is doing that push. And it does feel like if you were to add that kind of energy to trying to push a shit down, which hopefully you don't, but if you do, put this book in your bathroom. and I wrote it, but hopefully that won't be your experience. But you'll start to feel like you have to take a shit. And that is when like the new level of pushing comes in. So I think I had maybe 1 or 2 pushes like that. And those pushes wear you out too. That's another reason why that's another reason why you don't want to start doing all of that too early, because you need to, like, it was very tiring for me. I was way more alert and with it after Reiner than I was after Wylie. I was like, on and on, you had to fucking, and we'll talk about the placenta, but like, I was in another world, and I hadn't come back. They say that that when babies are born, the mom goes out of her body and into the stars to get the soul and bring it back. And I did that with both. There's a moment where I'm like, okay, I'm not there anymore, Patrick. I need you to watch my body. need you to keep an eye on my body, keep that doing the things, because like I'm not here. Like I'm not available. I was like thinking we were gonna go in the hot tub and stuff, and I'm very practical, just in all situations, but a lot of times the practical option isn't really there. But I was like, I really just want to have this kid in the hot tub so there's no cleanup afterwards. So I was like, let's get in the hot tub because I think this baby's going to come soon. But we didn't end up getting into the hot tub. We went right back to the bathroom where Reiner was born. And once I was on the toilet, like, I feel like it was probably, so, you know, look, I've heard a lot of people talk about active labor, like the difference between active labor and like not active labor. You can't do anything else when you're in active labor. Like that's the really intense thing, but you're not going to be there for a super long time. Like you're not, like I understand that like birth contractions and stuff like hurt the whole way through, but there's a really, really big difference between active labor. And I think it's important to like share with women that like, look, when the whole birth is not going to be as intense as like those last minutes there. So like you have space for this, like you can handle it, you can do it. And it's important to not get overly emotional or dramatic, you know, before that go time actually begins. And I had probably 3 big cries, and just crying because I bawled my eyes out to Reiner because he wasn't listening to me. And Reiner kind of only listens to me when I like have a big cry about it. I cried in the hot tub. I cried in the sauna, just like, I don't want the baby to come out of my vagina. I'm not in the mood. I'm so tired. Oh, I was feeling really bad for myself. So definitely very emotional, but I wasn't emotional in the sense where it's like, why is this happening to me? I can't do it. You did this to me. Like, it's not like that at all, because you can emotionally wear yourself out as well. And so I think it's just important to know, like, you know, instead of looking for all of these different mile markers, just have 2. There's a part of birth where you can move around and do other stuff. And if you can, please do. And then the part of birth where you can't. And when you're in the part of birth where you can't, like you're almost done, and, you know, just stick with it. But everything else, it's like when it's go time, it'll be go time. So we went into the bathroom, got on the squatty potty. We didn't have the squatty potty with Reiner, but I had my foot up on a trash can, and, you know, the whole thing, like that position really helps me. And also having the toilet there, it just feels like, cool, someone will catch it. The toilet feels like a very appropriate place to sit. The positioning and everything, it's like, you're like perfect place to have a baby. But I hadn't, so the contractions were getting super, super intense, but I hadn't heard Patrick saying yet, like, oh, I can see the head. And so I was really trying to not like get too lost in how painful it was until Patrick started saying, you know, I could see the head, because that was when I knew I was going to really need my reserves. And so I was like, I don't know if I can do this. And this one, I'm so grateful. I'm grateful for Patrick the whole birth long, like every single contraction that you were there for. I was so grateful that you were there. And every contraction that you weren't there for, I was like, I need Patrick. I need him to feel bad for me. But it was, he hadn't said, like, I can see the head or anything yet. And I had put my hands in my vagina a few times to try and feel if I could feel the head, but all I felt was squish and more squish. And I was like, all right, you know, I was expecting the head to be like squish, squish, bowling ball, you know, and I didn't feel that. So I'm going to tell what happened from my perspective, and then you can fill in the blanks. I was pushing with all my might. And at this point I had started like screaming because, yeah, that's what I was doing. But I think I had done 2 big pushes, and I could feel the baby, you know, I could feel the baby descending. I could feel the baby in my vagina, but Patrick hadn't said, I can see the head yet. So I was like, what, how fucking gnarly is this going to be? And finally Patrick's like, I see the head. And I went and I put my hand to feel, and all this is how like birth was like being on mushrooms for real. I went to feel, and it just felt like squish and more squish. And I like came this close to completely just breaking down and giving up. And I said, that's not the head, because what I thought, and from my perspective, was that like, and it doesn't make, it's like being on mushrooms, but I thought that the baby had somehow stayed behind in my belly, and that all of my guts were coming out of my vagina, and that's what I was touching, and that I was dead, and that there was no baby. And Patrick's like, no, like, that's the head. It's not. It was so sad, because I was just convinced that it was like never gonna be over. One more big push after that, head came out. And then one more big push after that, the whole body came out, and I was never seen this baby roll out into Patrick's hands, and
she came out pretty quick after that.
Shot right out.
Yeah.
But that's not how it felt to my vagina. And then I'll just recap this. I was so like, wow, out of it. And Patrick was like, the placenta's still in, and there's a knot in the cord, which I've never even like looked up. I don't even know what like a knot in a cord means, but she was fine.
It wasn't tight. It was knotted, but it wasn't.
Yeah, but there was a knot in the cord, and you're like,
it wasn't stopping circulation.
Yeah, you're like, weird, how did this happen?
Flow.
But I actually forgot to birth the placenta. With Reiner, it came out right afterwards, and there's like, I guess, a big push that you do after birth that like a midwife or something will help remind you to do. And there's a few things you want to check for, that like the uterus has gone back down, and it'll feel like a kind of a grapefruit down at the bottom of your stomach, but also the placenta coming out. But after Reiner was born, I forgot all about what that felt like in my vag. And with Wylie, I remember telling Patrick afterwards, my pussy is fucking like pounding right now. Like, it hurts so much. And it turns out that like the placenta was just sitting in my vag I one little push, and I could have pushed it out. But I know people get pretty paranoid about the placenta, but luckily I had read from somebody else, like, yeah, like it took 12 hours for my placenta to come out, but it did. And so I was like, cool, whatever, if I'll start worrying after 12 hours, basically. But I was like real achy and stuff. And 3 hours went by real fast. She was born at 6:30. At 9:30, I'm up here. And I was like, oh, I wonder what's the deal with the placenta. So I chose to like follow the cord and just see how far. And it was like right at the base of my vagina. I gave one little push, and the whole placenta came out. And it had broken a little bit, just a tiny bit, but I found all of the pieces. I could have birthed that thing like ages ago. But people get super dramatic about that, like you're gonna have a postpartum hemorrhage, you're gonna bleed out. It was uncomfortable, but I'm a week out postpartum, and I'm in the exact same shape that I was with Reiner, who's Reiner, like I didn't push Reiner's placenta out. It just came unceremoniously, fell in the toilet. I was like, oh, we're gonna do this ritual and this ritual. Fell in the toilet, then we ate it. Like, it was like a big deal. We didn't eat this placenta, so that'll just be a note for, anybody that's there with you. Just remind you to push out the placenta. Don't get paranoid or weird about it.
Yeah,
but
it's a thought in my mind, but I should have expressed it.
Just a word on the cord as well. Like so we were going to, with Reiner's cord, we cut it, we tied it with embroidery thread, and that was it. With this baby, we were gonna do like a cord burning ceremony, but honestly, that's just a lot of fucking moving parts and a lot of long process. Smells like burning flesh, like the whole thing. I was like, even though we had been planning, but with Reiner's cord, it took almost 3 weeks for Reiner's cord to fall off. And we were convinced that it was like infected. We ended up actually taking him to the doctor, who was like, you're fine. But don't
do anything.
But it was 3 weeks. And like with the cord, don't do anything. People are going to tell you don't do anything to it. Don't do it. Keep it dry. Don't let it get wet.
And let it breathe.
As much as you can.
Yeah.
But also, like, all cords are different, because we did the exact same thing with her, and her cord just fell off this morning. It was dried out and stuff by the next day. Reiner's cord was wet for like weeks, and it was really stressful for us. So if you get one of those cords, don't panic. it is like hard, you know, when your kid's not waterproof and you're like, oh my God, when is this fucking thing ever going to go away? It will, but some cords just take a really long time
and look a little gnarlier.
And look a little gnarlier, and
they all look a little gnarly. It's rotten flesh. It smells.
Yeah, it smells. You know, like if it smells, it doesn't mean that there's an infection. It's literally like a piece of rotting flesh falling off of a body. So, but if you're Googling like normal stuff around umbilical cords, you'll just always think that your baby's doing something. And if you need like reassurance, what I like to do, or what I did with Reiner, find the best pediatric unit in the US, one that's far away from you so that they can't stress you out. Call them up and be like, hey, don't want to bring my kid to the emergency room with all this bacteria and stuff flying around. Little worried about his umbilical cord. They'll put you on the phone with the nurse, and she'll basically tell you, yeah, unless the kid has a fever, unless there's redness coming out from the umbilical cord, you don't need to worry about it. But if you need reassurance, and as a first-time mom and a second-time mom, I needed quite a bit of reassurance, you can always call those nurses up at the pediatric ward and they'll help you out. But this time, I was so happy to have the Bruger report because I could just ask moms. They're like, is this normal? And they're like, yeah, that's normal. So is there anything you want to add on that, Patrick, from your perspective?
This time around, it was much easier for me to see Everest while she was having contractions and just let that happen instead of being worrying and just feeling super like bad for her. You know, I knew she was in pain, but I knew it was part of the process now. And there was really nothing I could do. Just, you know, hold her hand if she wanted me to.
Hurt.
Let it happen. Not think anything's up, and not get emotional myself around it. So that conserved my energy a lot, not getting emotional around those things, and then just seeing the process happen. The big mucus plug, water break. It's like, okay, you know, we're making progress here. And then things changed a lot when I could tell when, you know, she was squeezing my hand harder, making louder noises, breathing deeper. And so then when things really got going, that's when my encouragement and keeping her focused really, really helped, because she was somewhere else.
And I mean it, y'all. Like, you are somewhere else. Like, you need somebody to tell you.
To, like, ground you a little bit.
It seems, you know, you're like, oh, it's ridiculous having somebody there saying push, push, push. But you need it because you're like, you're going into other places. And, like, those, especially, like, those last few pushes when the baby's, like, in, like, ring of fire, crowning, that whole thing. Like, I've literally died both times on some, like, there's a psychedelic transformation that happens in those moments that you're not physically present for. And I can't stress this enough. Like, things in this labor did not start to move instead of, like, this is not about just the body. This is about the body, mind, and spirit. This is about a part of you dying to be a more capable mother. It's a huge rite of passage. It's a huge transition. So, like, trying to just measure the body is pointless. You want to look at where things are being tied up emotionally, where you're holding on to things, because nothing in this birth started moving in any kind of way whatsoever until I poured my heart out, prayed for God to help me with my children, and I will not stop praying that prayer for the rest of my mom life. That lesson that only came from me having a meltdown from assessing how angry I was during birth and not just being cool with it, being like, let me get to the bottom of this. By assessing that, by getting to the bottom of it, by pouring my heart out, I was able to move along the labor, but also get the most important lesson that I need for this next wave of motherhood. So fuck measuring the cervix, even fuck measuring the contractions. Like, there's only so much of this that is related to the body. Birth is designed to clear a bunch of space for you. So go looking for that space anywhere where it feels like things are tight, not moving, where you feel like, I don't like this energy doesn't really feel good to me. Investigate it and release it, and the whole thing will start moving.
Yeah. Same on the father's end, not to that degree on the mother's end, but There was a moment when I was out in the sauna and I just had to be like, hey, I'm ready. Okay. Because I had a week earlier whenever said she thought the baby was coming. My first thought was, I'm not ready.
Yeah.
They gave me a few more days and you just got to be ready. It's just happening.
Yeah, and you know what? When it happens, you'll be ready.
Yeah.
You're never ready. Like, you're never ready. There's always a few more things you wanted to do. I was exactly, 6 hours into my maternity leave. Wylie came at 38 weeks. Reiner came at 40 weeks. I just assumed that it would be 40 weeks even overdue. But Wylie came right at 38 weeks, and I was like, oh, well, I guess we're doing this. Yeah. And, you know, I spent so long trying to be like, how the fuck am I going to do this? That's really like the voice of the mind. The mind always wants to know how you're going to do it, because when it's time to do it, you just will, and you won't know how you're doing it. Like, so that whole question, like, how am I going to do it? No, it's, you won't know how. It's something that's being done through you. And, you know, I woke up this morning with my 2 babies, and I'm doing it. I'm doing it, and I'm doing it better than I thought that I would. Baby. You got a kiss for that babe? Aww.
Yeah.
That's so sweet.